Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Jeannie White is the producer and writes the blogs, which I highly suggest you read for the information about the guest and how you could get in touch with the guest. I also want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio. I'm really excited, folks. Sometimes I get so excited I can't get my words out. I just love what I do on Chatting with Betsy because I wish I knew of resources when my husband was alive. So Chatting with Betsy is my way of paying it forward and helping people because there was nobody to help me until later in my journey. And I want all caregivers, and even if you're not a caregiver, to know about the resources that are available to you. And there's a lot of resources available. And on Chatting with Betsy, I will tell you about resources, and I have people on that are a wonderful resource. And my guest today is a wonderful resource. Her name is Lizette. I'm going to have her pronounce her last name. And Lizette is a licensed occupational therapist. Her private Facebook group is Think Different Dementia. And Lizette is a dementia consultant and cognitive wellness coach. How I wish I knew you 5 years ago, Lizette. Welcome to Chatting with Betsy.
Thank you, Betsy. My name is Lizette Cloete, spelled C-L-O-E-T-E, and my husband always says, I'll give you a clue to. So that's how you pronounce it.
Cloete.
There you
Lizette.
go. You did great.
Oh, thank you. Could you please tell people who don't know, what is it that you do? What does a dementia consultant do and a cognitive wellness coach?
Okay, so we'll start with the dementia consultant. As a dementia consultant, what I'm doing or what I look for when I'm working with families is to help them through the process with their loved one, all the way from diagnosis, to the end stages. Every person's journey is different. My hope is to try to help families get on the same page regarding how to, what's going on with their loved one, with their mom or their dad or their spouse, to be able to provide them the resources and the coaching and consulting role as they're facing things, because what I have found as a clinician working in the hospitals or in the nursing homes or even in home health, we get, as therapists, PTs, OTs, speech, we get a person in the hospital when they fell and they broke their hip, or when they came in with urinary tract infection and they're not thinking clearly or whatever. And then my job right then and there is to teach you what you need to know right now. But the reality is what you need to know right now today in October 2020 is not necessarily the same as what you need to know in January 2021. And so the consultant role, the dementia consultant role, is to try to work with people more throughout as problems are occurring, to be able to help them fix those problems. My biggest goal is to try and keep people with dementia out of facilities if we can, as much as possible. I know that sometimes it is not possible. Not everybody needs to stay at home. Not everybody should stay at home. But if there's a family's desire to keep their loved one at home, sometimes they just don't know how to do it. And the dementia consultant role is to help you figure that out. What resources do you need? Is your home accessible? What kind of extra things do we need to bring in? How do I train the family? How do I train the caregivers coming in how to manage this particular individual? Because every person's different. So that's the dementia consultant side of it. Now, the cognitive wellness side of it is I have started to realize, because I'm 50, and I started to realize that, I pick people up or I see people when they're already in the process, and sometimes there's not much that, there's a belief that nothing can be done, which is starting to be debunked a little bit more, but it's not in the common vernacular yet, that there's a lot that we can do to actually prevent our cognition from getting worse. You and me included, normal people, people with mild cognitive impairment, etc. The sooner we start working on that part of it, the better we can keep people and prevent things from getting worse. And so the research is starting to show that you can, through lifestyle changes and dietary changes and lots of other things that you can do, that you can actually prevent cognitive decline from occurring and even, reverse it to an extent. I'm not to that point that I'm confident enough to say reverse it, but there are physicians who are. But really to slow it down and to decrease it and to improve people's thinking processes. So the cognitive wellness side of it is I do work with people in their 40s and 50s and 60s who have perceived that they may be having trouble with their thinking, or they have, there's a phase called subjective cognitive impairment. That's I know that there might not be something right. I'm not thinking as well as I used to be thinking, but when I do a cognitive test with that person, the tests aren't showing that they have anything wrong. The next phase is kind of the mild cognitive impairment, and that is a standardized test actually says there's something wrong. And so, working with people with mild cognitive impairment and subjective cognitive impairment to start to make the lifestyle changes to prevent them from hopefully getting to the point where they actually have a diagnosis of dementia, and trying to prevent it from getting worse. And there's a lot that we can do.
That sounds really awesome. I understand what you're talking about. People are talking about the doctors about diet and exercise and doing mental exercises. And I believe my husband was 56 when he was diagnosed.
Wow.
And one of the neurologists said the best thing you can do is physical exercise. Better than any pill. It is one of the best
things you can do.
Yes. And I believe that helped Matt because he was able to walk by himself for 4.5 years, which is pretty good. And I think that really, helped him until, he couldn't walk by himself anymore. But, back then there wasn't people doing virtual exercises and, what you're doing. And I'm glad to see more people like yourself offering resources and services. Now, you're based in North Carolina. Is that correct?
South Carolina, actually.
Oh, South Carolina. I knew it was one of them.
Yeah, well, they're not that far apart.
And do you, in this COVID time, do you go to the individual's house?
So I currently still work for a home health company. So yes, I still go to individual people's houses, and then I do the consulting business, which I'm hoping to transfer into my full-time thing as I hopefully get it up a little stronger to be able to do everything virtually and just consulting and those kinds of things. So yes, I still keep it, and plus I'm not entirely sure that I'll ever entirely stop working with my patients like where I work, because I love what I do, and that's how I get to work with people with cognitive impairment. And it's wonderful to be able to sit at somebody's table like happened today and be able to answer their questions and explain it to them in a way that they actually understand. And you can tell that they understand more than what they had been explained to before. I know doctors, I love them dearly, but they're busy and they don't have time to sit and explain to somebody what it means or what the looks like, or why are you having this happen?
It's true. Doctors just don't have the time to, explain things in great detail. So if somebody wants your expertise, they can go look you up online, which information will be in the blog. And the name of your business is that Think Different Dementia?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so the private Facebook group I started was to start to be able to have a smaller audience that I can truly work with people more individually online on Facebook, answering questions more specific than a 30,000 group, where there are a lot of people and it's hard to develop relationships with people. So the smaller group, the purpose of it is to educate people about dementia. I'm very active on it. I put a lot of videos out. I ask questions of what people want, and then I try to answer those questions the best I can. So it's a little more personal. It's a little more one-on-one, not one-on-one, but one-on-one access to somebody who can answer your questions without it being in such a large group and getting lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, so I just want to tell the listeners I do belong to Lizette's group, Think Different Dementia, and I did see Lizette talk, and I was impressed. I think it's really great for anyone. I mean, I'm a past caregiver, but I want to learn more, and I think it's great for caregivers. I have my own group, hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement, which you're a member of, and I think I encourage people, join groups, learn as much as you can, hear different people speak, because everyone has their own niche. And I want to let the listeners know, because this is international, that you do international consultations.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Like I told you earlier, I'm from South Africa originally, and so I'm very comfortable doing all sorts of things in almost every different way that you can internationally. It does not intimidate me at all. The hardest thing is the time zones, but that's not even the hardest thing to figure out. Once you figure out the time zone, I can usually make it work. I do early mornings for people that are 12 hours ahead or behind, and so I've done a lot of consultations from South Africa because obviously I'm from there, so people from there pay attention, and then they reach out to me from the UK, from Wales and Scotland and other places like that, and Australia, and Singapore. I think Singapore was probably the furthest away. And the Philippines. I get a lot of people from the Philippines reaching out. So absolutely international is not at all intimidating.
That's great. I understand about the time zones because I had that difficulty myself when I interview someone that's in another country. It's hard enough figuring out in the U.S. What made you go into your own practice?
That's a really good question. I really always wanted to be an entrepreneur, to have my own business. And I did some life care consulting, life care planning when I was younger, but my kids were younger, and it was just not the right time. Plus, I realized that working necessarily like in the litigatory part of things wasn't really what I was cut out to do. And now I'm 50. I have a married daughter. My youngest daughter is going to be graduating college, and I love the idea of being able to expand people's knowledge And although I love working with people one-on-one, I can only affect to change their one-on-one. The online world and consulting in this manner means that I can affect a change with more people and be able to change the quality of life of the person living with dementia, and hopefully make it easier for the people caring for them so that they can do this marathon. This marathon, because it's not a sprint.
Well, that's for sure.
So, they have the people who are caring for these people at home, and, there are more and more and more people being diagnosed with some level of cognitive impairment every single day. And, it's like this tsunami coming that they're estimating, massive increases over the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. And then I have a little bit of a selfish reason for it too. I figure that not everybody knows how to manage or teach or work with people with dementia. And I really want the next generation coming up, like the therapists or care, people who are going to be providing my care, to know what they're doing if I happen to have this in the future. So teaching people, expanding, the concentric circles so that I can reach more and more people and affect a bigger change on people's lives. That's really the reason why I went into this.
Wow, that's beautiful, Lizette. That's really, I love it. I just love, what you just said. And you're right. They call it the silver tsunami. Baby boomers. I'm one of them. And it's, going to drain the system. And I think baby boomers are going to change the way the elderly are going to be treated. Now, I don't think of myself as elderly yet. I'm going to be 63 in December. But, I don't think my generation and younger want to be warehoused in a big nursing facility. I would prefer like a smaller group home. And
absolutely.
I think that's going to be the way to go, and also getting the help, through consulting and the Zoom. Zoom is going to be it got really huge with the pandemic. I think it's going to continue to be huge.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, it's going to be the way to go.
And the world be nothing. Now geography went away with the pandemic and Zoom.
Right. So if somebody wants a consultation with you, is that covered by insurance or is that self-pay?
It is not covered by insurance. I am not working as an occupational therapist. I use my background in my training, but if anybody practices a speech therapist, a PTOT, in that capacity, they need to be licensed where the person is residing. And so I am not actually working with the person with dementia when I'm doing the dementia consulting. I'm working with the caregivers, the family. So
okay.
Do you see the difference? Like as a therapist, if I work with a patient with dementia, the way Medicare and insurance works is they need to be making progress. They need to be progressing towards achieving certain goals. And so that is not at all the role. I can do it in South Carolina if I choose to. So far I have not chosen to do that, but I certainly have the freedom to do that if I wanted to, and I could take Medicare patients in my business. But I haven't expanded into that arena because that's not the purpose of the business. It's really the caregiver education and teaching them what to expect next and what kind of, how do we fix things now to make it easier and prevent things in the future. Now, the cognitive wellness side of it, that is solely coaching, so that is also not insurance. So, yes, it is self-pay.
Okay.
I could yet again treat people as an occupational therapist in South Carolina, but our hands are so tied with insurance that I am the model that I'm working under is not an insurance-based model.
Okay. I ask that because people always want to know, oh, is that
Sure.
covered by, insurance or Medicare? And so they would, contact you, and then you would set up a Zoom, of course, if they didn't live in your area.
Right.
And, personally, and I know I told you this before, and I'll tell the listeners, and I'll keep saying this. Listeners, I would jump at the opportunity to get a coach to help you. The caregiver statistics of mortality is at an all-time high. Release some of your stress and get some help. Now, you'll say, oh, Betsy, oh, Lizette's not going to relieve 100% of my stress. No, it won't, but it will relieve some of it, and some is better than none, as far as I'm concerned. I'm telling you, as a past caregiver, I wished I knew that there were Lizettes out there. I wish I knew there was people out there that could have helped me in my journey to make it easier for me. And I just think it's, something to inquire about. Contact Lizette. If it's not for you, then it's not for you. But you don't know until you find out and ask.
Right. So you bring up a very important thing about the caregiver, caregiver burnout and so on. And I have a very easy caregiver hierarchy that I teach people. And our tendency is when we have somebody that we're taking care of is to make them the most important thing. Everything revolves around them, right? Their care, their doctor's appointments, their everything. And the reality, the most important thing is not the person you're taking care of. It's actually the household, because the household has to function first. You have to have food, shelter, clothing. You have to be able to pay your bills. You have to be able to get your medication. You have to run the household first. And then the second most important thing is the person providing the care. Like when we're in an airplane, not that anybody's flying right now, but when you're in an airplane and they do the safety check at the beginning, what do they say to you? When the oxygen drops out of the sky, don't put it on the child first, put it on yourself. Well, the reason for that is because you're going to die if you put it on the kid first, and the kid can't help you. So you have to help the person you have to help yourself first before you help the person needing help. Because if you don't take care of yourself first, you cannot take care of them. And then the third thing is taking care of the person who needs help. And I've seen it time and time again that people get that flip-flopped. They'll take care of the person first, then they'll take care of the household, and they put themselves last, and then they don't have the endurance to run the marathon because it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Very true. That's very true. I mean, I know as a caregiver, past caregiver, that, sometimes you do put your health on the back burner and you can't tend to things as you would like. But, self-care, I say this all the time, and I'm going to keep saying it, self-care, folks, is a matter of life and death, literally. Mm-hmm. If you don't take care of yourself, yes, matter of that's right, the caregiver. I mean, sometimes I wonder how I got through, and I always give God the glory, but I wish I knew really about people like you, Lizette, and I want to, thank you for what you do and the service that you offer, because it is very important. Someone goes to a doctor, you take your loved one to a neurologist, and they don't understand what the neurologist said. They can come to you and say, Lizette, here's the report. Can you help me? Mm-hmm. Do you help them explain to them what's going on?
I certainly could. I would have to, I couldn't interpret it. It would have to be the report that they gave me, but I could explain to them what the report actually says.
Yes,
and then
to help them understand.
Absolutely. Some of the other stuff that I can do is I have several different types of screenings that I can use with people that are not evaluations, like therapy evaluations per se, but they're screenings that can help stage people with their dementia journey, because what I have found more and more as I'm going through, this is a learning process for me too, in spending so much more time one-on-one talking to people, caring for people with dementia, where I'm spending repetitive weeks and months talking to them about their journeys, is that I totally lost train of thought of where I was going with this. Let's see, how did I start? Where did I start with this?
Talking about the different, like the staging.
Oh, yes, staging. A lot of people do not really understand why staging is important, because they just think, oh, it's just a different stage. Well, staging is important because of how we actually manage each different stage is different. And so when, there are phases during this journey where people actually can still learn information. And so if they're in that phase, there's things that we can do to help them so that they can maintain that level for as long as possible. Well, if they're not at that phase anymore, trying to teach the person how to do something is not going to make a difference. So how do we teach you to keep them at the best level? So when you truly start to understand the different stages that people go through with their dementia journey, it makes the person who's the caregiver actually able to be better at doing it, and I think decrease their stress levels and their frustration when they understand why. Why is mom asking me 300 times a day to go home?
Absolutely.
If you know the why behind it, then all of a sudden it's not as frustrating. But if you just think, but how, for heaven's sakes, how is it that you cannot remember that you've asked me the same question for the 300th time today? But if you know the reason why, then all of a sudden it takes that frustration away and makes it easier for everybody to cope, because then you can start to say the right things, because the person is more likely at that time really afraid, and anxious, and they don't feel like, they've lived in this house for 50 years, Mom. How can you not know your home? Well, Mom might be in her head 7 years old, and this isn't home.
Right.
Where are my mom and dad? Where are my siblings? This is not where I grew up. I want to go home. And so when you understand that, then it starts to make it easier for the person providing the care not to get as frustrated maybe, or have just a little more, an ounce of patience or an ounce of grace, to be able to reassure the person so that they're feeling safe, because that's why they're asking, is because they don't feel safe, So knowing the stages of dementia really can make a difference in how we caregivers, how we treat them, and not treat as in medical treat, but how we walk alongside them and help them through this. And then it helps you as the care person, because you now understand why, and it makes it so much easier. So I find a lot of people don't understand why it's important to know what different stages people are at. So there are some tests that we can do to come up with a stage, and also getting a person in a stage. There are ways of doing it with families using some questionnaires that I can, you may see mom in one way, and your sister may see mom in a totally different way because sister doesn't live with her. But then when sister gets the questionnaire and has to start paying attention to what she's seeing, then we see, okay, you think mom's over here. I think mom's over here. The reality is she's kind of in between, but this is what that means. So I think it can also really help families get on the same page. because I know that's one of the biggest things I see online, people saying, but how do I get my family to understand XYZ? Because they only come in and they see mom, for 30 minutes or an hour in the middle of the day when she's great, not at 3 o'clock in the morning when she's coming unglued.
Exactly right. I agree 100%, Lizette. I think education is desperately needed for caregivers, and to know, what to expect at different stages, or, whatever people want to call it. Some people don't like to call it stages or progression. However you want to call it, you need to know. You need to know what to expect. And I wish I knew 20 years ago with my mother-in-law what to expect. I was more prepared with Matt. But even that I dealt with my mother-in-law, everyone's different, and I knew how to handle a hallucination, but it still was tough to see it in your face.
Absolutely.
And and what you're saying, I agree 100%. If caregivers knew what to expect, they wouldn't get themselves stressed out. And, I see it in support groups also. Why is my mom or dad peeing in their pants, or my husband? Why can't they go to the bathroom? Why are they peeing on the floor? And, asking why are they going home, or when are they going home? How come they don't recognize me? And, all these questions could be answered if they took someone took the time to explain it to them. And, that's where you would come in, Lizette. If someone can hire you for, when someone comes to you, Lizette, do you have like a pre, what do you call it, like a pre-thing of, I have to see you.
I talk to people first, before, obviously. Make sure it's a good fit, because not everybody's always a good fit.
Right.
For some people love me, some people hate me, and that's life. You're not going to work well with everybody. But the purpose behind the consultation, the initial consultation, is always to figure out what do you need? What's the problem? Is it something that I can help fix, or is this not something that I can help fix? And then we go from there. And my purpose behind all of this is, and this has been the other challenging part, is because every person has custom needs. So every person I work with has almost a customized package, because they have custom needs, because every family is not the same. And so it can be as much as one-time consultation, after the first sit down, is this a good fit type of thing, or it can be a package that we put together that we can do one time a month, for 6 months, for a year, whatever. There are lots of different ways we can package this. And so each person and each family is different, so I try to work with individuals and families to make it be what they need. And, I look at houses. What do we need to do to modify the house? Can you live there? Is it an appropriate place to age in place? I try to look at the community resources and help people put in place the help that they need. I try to work with the family members that are providing the care. Some people are still living at home with care providers that work. When is it safe? Is it still safe for them to be home alone? So each package looks different. So it's not just a one size fits all.
Right.
It's because every person with dementia is different. Yes, there's some commonalities, but every situation is different, just as we are all different.
Yes, very true. Lizette, I can't believe our time is up. I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing what you do. Could you please tell the audience how they can get in touch with you? It will be in the blog, but I just like
Sure.
for them to hear it also.
Sure. So if you want to get a hold of me, the easiest way is to just email me, and my email is actually pretty easy. It's just thinkdifferentdementia@gmail.com. So just plain the name of the company, thinkdifferentdementia@gmail.com. And then if you want to join the Facebook group, it's Think Different Dementia, because my purpose is to have people think differently about dementia in its entirety. I just want to try to be a small cog in the wheel to change the worldview about dementia, and not to just have people, believe there's nothing that can be done, because there are things that we can do. And then within hopefully by the end of the week or so is the goal. The website is www.thinkdifferentdementia.com. But it's still under construction, but it's almost done.
Very good. Well, thank you for doing what you're doing, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you helping others and making a difference in other people's lives. And this is what Chatting with Betsy is about. It's not about me. It's about helping others. And this is why I do what I do, and I'm passionate about it. I also have a support group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. Folks, you could belong to more than one support group. I do, and I'm a past caregiver. But I still belong to a lot of support groups so I can help other people, because I feel as a veteran, I need to help the newbies, I call them, because I wish somebody threw me a life rope in the beginning of my journey. And, get in contact with Lizette, talk to her, and see if you're a fit, and if you could afford it. I mean, you don't know until you ask, right? So That's what my mother always said. You don't know till you ask. And I would go for it. I can't say it enough. I can't impress upon it enough to people, even if you're not a caregiver. But if you are a caregiver, think about your own health. Think about helping yourself to help your loved one, and to educate yourself so that you're not as stressed out. And I'll tell you, caregivers sometimes cause themselves a lot of stress because they have a lack of education as to what to do and how to handle their loved one. And if you missed any of this podcast, you can listen to Chatting with Betsy on Apple, Google, YouTube, and wherever you hear podcasts, even Amazon Music. So I want to thank Lizette again, and happy Halloween, everybody. Keep safe. In a world where you could be anything, be kind and shine your light bright, because we need it. Until we chat again, this is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Bye, everybody.